Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is the Austrian, and today um, we have a wonderful little tidbit to react to here today. We have the final surrender of the French, I should say, to globalism, to all those wonderful things that Le Pen stood against, but will never be able to live out because France. Oh well. So be it. I think they could have just a simpler way to do this may have been just to simply create a time machine and go back and ask whoever it was, Charles Martel, whoever, to lose the Battle of Tours. If you're going to surrender to Islam, the time and place doesn't exactly make a difference. So here we are now, where it's happening currently. The Rothschild banker Macron have defeated her, and I think, let me just I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself here. Oh no, good. Good, I'm not. But yes, so she lost by a rather wide margin. If I were to just Google French election results here, as I've done a couple times over the night, it wasn't even close. It was not even close. The French people resoundingly voting for someone who does not have their interests at heart, but has the interests of a global establishment in their interests. Just a few of those interests, of course, being the increased influence of the EU and its continued suppression of the rights of its member states, both of the international Rothschild banking complex, so forth and so on. Just the stuff the people in England and the United States voted against. But who is it? Sargon about this. If you won't mind me looking for it here momentarily. Here we go. Well, this is that guy's tease quote, but don't ask me why he has the anarcho-communist flag up here. That's just yeah, people. If you'll notice Sargon's stream, it's full of people calling him anti-Semites for pointing out that the Rothschild banking complex exists and that Macron is very much a part of that establishment. But he has a good tweet about whatchamacallit. He says that the people of France defend their sovereignty. If I could find the tweet. Apparently, I cannot speak of the devil. Yes, it's in the end of the world that Macron won. Unlike Britain, France is clearly not ready to protect its sovereignty. And very well put. Very, very well put. The sad thing is that France, realizing the cost of its sovereignty is more French lives at the hands of Islamic terrorism, will come at an incredibly steep price. And so that's the disappointing part. The disappointing part isn't that an establishment candidate won and that the EU will be able to perpetuate itself solely. It's the fact that because of those two things, French lives will be lost. That's the greatest unfortunate happening of this whole event. And so I thought it may be appropriate somewhat to go over some election coverage of the happening that currently is undertaking its way. I'd play for you this little video here, but I don't think YouTube allows you to play videos on screen share so that you can hear the volume as well. There used to be a YouTube video sharing feature on Google Hangouts, but it's something that has eluded me for quite some time. So if you know how to do that, drop a comment, please. Emmanuel Macron was elected France's youngest head of state since Napoleon last night after beating his far-right rival Marine Le Pen in an emphatic result that will have far-reaching consequences for Brexit and Europe. Oh, and that's a very accurate assessment because Macron has consistently pledged to work with Merkel in strengthening the EU, which will make it that much harder for the Britons. I think that's the correct way to say it, but the Britons will have a much harder time negotiating Brexit, as the EU still has both of its two main legs to stand on, those being France and Germany. Protections gave 39-year-old Mr. Macron almost two-thirds of the vote, showing a clear path to Elysee Palace for the pro-EU centrist who was a political unknown until 3 years ago and has never held elected office. Yeah, because in that time he was sucking up to establishment candidates such as Francois Hollande, while working with them in other industries to strengthen their ties to global banking and whatnot. If I sound like a broken record, but I feel these things are worth repeating. A sober Mr. Macron immediately reached across the divide to Le Pen voters, saying he heard the anger, anxiety, and doubts that many had expressed. Bullshit, he did. Bull fucking shit. His policy shows a incredible neglect for the concerns of those living in the French countryside, for those living in the inner cities who know what it's like to live amongst the Islamic ghettos of the town, and to know what it's like to live in fear of simply walking down the street and worried about something as brutal as gang rape or a robbery or being assaulted. He knows nothing of that because he's an elite living in his ivory tower who will never understand what they're expressing. And so any reaching across the aisle he attempts to do, I hope is soundly rejected by Le Pen voters, and I hope it's seen through as the cheap political ploy that it is. More results. Not shy away from his internationalist pro-EU agenda, saying, I will defend Europe. It is our civilization which is at stake. I will work to rebuild ties between Europe and its citizens. Except isn't the thing you're working towards. You should be worried about France, not Europe. You are the president of your country, not the whole of Europe, nor is Angela Merkel. So, of course, more grandstanding in this idiotic belief that Europe is a single entity. And, of course, they have a commonly shared culture, but needs to be worried about by France. France should worry about France. Not do that. He will continue to be Merkel's bitch and allow the waves of migrants to continue to flow. Later, Mr. Macron took the stage to the strains of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the European Union anthem, courtyard of the Louvre Museum. Yes, that's right. Not to the French national anthem, but to the European national anthem. In case there was honestly any doubt about where his loyalty lied, France and the people of France. Certainly not with them. Later, Mr. Macron took this. Read that already. He said France was facing an immense task to rebuild European unity, fix the economy, and ensure security against extremist threats. Europe and the world are waiting for us to defend the spirit of enlightenment, threatened in so many places, he told the crowd, as his wife Bridget and their extended family joined in. His wife Bridget is his former school teacher, with like an age gap of almost 20 years, I believe. He was 15 when he first met her, and she was like she was like 30-something, I think. So it's up there. He's a weird dude. But anyway, don't know why it's France's task to worry about European unity as if that should be a thing, as if the unique cultural identities of the various countries that make up Europe shouldn't be represented in their own autonomous ways, as opposed to being one just European conglomerate, because, multiculturalism and all that good stuff. And, of course, the spirit of enlightenment, nothing that the extremist you're claiming to fight against will hold dearly at all, but you're just going to let them keep coming into your countries as you claim to defend enlightenment values from who, I suppose your political opponents like Le Pen, who would have otherwise actually defended Enlightenment principles, but are now relegated to the sideline, so to speak. Theresa May discussed Brexit with Mr. Macron in a phone call late last night, Downing Street said. The Prime Minister reiterated that the UK wants a strong partnership. France is one of our closest allies, and we look forward to working with the new president on a wide range of shared priorities. Oh, priority. He's directly opposed to you in everything he believes about the European Union and everything he believes about a united Europe. Don't work with this dog. Mr. Macron is expected to drive a hard bargain over Brexit. What did I strident note during his campaign by warning that negotiations would be no walk in the park and that Britain would be left in servitude as a result of leaving the EU. Dear Christ. What does May think she's going to get out of this man? What is he offering? So I hope Britain makes no deal with any trading partner of the EU. I hope the EU as a whole does not make a deal with Britain for Britain's sake. Any deal they make would inherently benefit the EU at the cost of Britain. And so I hope Britain just goes around making individual deals with the member states of the European Union. And I hope something along those lines is achievable. I also hope Britain makes plenty of deals with other nations who are currently trying to trade with it, that being the nations of the Anglosphere, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the United States, and even places like China, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, India, all of those other places. Because, Britain is its own trade empire. Britain built a legacy on its own, of its own industrial ingenuity, and it doesn't need the European Union for these things. So I hope Britain is able to just go as expected. Back to the election. However, the result was welcomed by some senior conservatives who argued Mr. Macron would bring much-needed stability to Europe ahead of the Brexit negotiations. But European stability isn't really what you want for the Brexit negotiations, of course. You don't want... I'll read this next segment. We don't want to be negotiating with an EU in existential crisis. Le Pen had once said Crispin Blunt, the Tory chairman of Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Yes, you do. Opponent's weaknesses. Make them your bitch. There's nothing wrong with that. The Tories are gross, though. Not even right-wing remotely. European leaders rushed to welcome the victory of Mr. Macron, as the establishment does, who had flown EU flags at rallies throughout his campaign and has promised to lead the rebirth of the European project. Yeah, good luck with that shit. Good luck. Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, had a very warm call with Mr. Macron. The German chancellor called his election a victory for a strong, united Europe. Well, Mrs. Merkel, Frau Merkel, country are approaching quite fast, and it appears that as of this moment, the polls are predicting partners will be Alternative für Deutschland, something abbreviated AFT, something along the lines of what I just said, and they very much represent Miss Le Pen's previous statement. So we'll see how much time you have in your own country to lead that rebirth, supposedly, with Mr. Macron. Miss Le Pen's party had made it clear they were gunning for at least 40% of the vote. She failed to achieve such heights, but her performance maintained her record of improving the Front National's score in every election since she became leader in 2011. And that's true. Front National has swept in a lot of local elections, things along that line, and so good for a time. Votes in her favor won 48. Won more than twice the amount her estranged father and FN co-founder Jean-Marie mustered in 2002. Miss Le Pen said the historic and massive result turned her patriotic and Republican alliance into the main opposition force against the new president's project. 74% the turnout was at its lowest since 1969. Well, that's no surprise. Pretty much everyone was horribly affected by, was horribly disaffected by the two candidates. And wow, this is something I had not seen previously, but this is the map of the results. So these that had previously gone for Le Pen and the first round of elections went completely Macron. And I guess that's in part due to Fillon, however you say that, probably in part due to his endorsement of Macron, which some fucking Eurosceptic he is, some fucking right-winger. But it goes on. An early edition of the front page of Libération, the left-leaning French newspaper jointly founded by the late philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I recognize the guy, existential philosopher, simply declared, well played, alongside a portrait of Mr. Macron, and well done, alongside a photograph of Mrs. Le Pen's back. I doubt they have much sympathy for her, so I'd like to see what that magazine says, but of course, not paying for communist propaganda. Newspaper Le Figaro features Le Pen, yada, yada, yada. It seems like most of this is just sucking off Macron. I'm going to ingest a good bit of other cancer. Do we want to read Cuck Prime, Justin Trudeau's statements on the event? Let me just see if anybody is watching. I haven't been paying attention to that at all. So no one's watching. So be it. Alrighty then. Well, seeing then as nobody is listening and everybody will be watching this later or not, why don't we read his statement? I'll just continue going through this to see if there's anything of relevant interest whatsoever. Paris, eh? Scattered groups of masked protesters have clashed with police, firing tear gas in eastern Paris after the election of pro-business independent Emmanuel Macron as France's president. Pro-business is a relative term in French. The man, a socialist, groomed by the former President Hollande himself, but you know, he's not that much more pro-business. He's about as pro-business as anyone in fucking Republic of France could get. About 100 protesters are dodging police and mobile protests through neighborhoods near Paris Lachaise Cemetery. Police are checking documents and detaining some protesters. Cool. His former drama teacher to take center stage as France's first lady. Yeah, this bitch is old. Like, he's cute. Macron is a young dude, but she's ancient. La Marseille, yada, yada, yada. This is essentially a timeline, so well, Trump being a good statesman, I suppose. Yes, the euro rises. The experiment will continue for a little bit longer. Condones defeat the Macron. C'est la vie. C'est la vie. Yeah, all of this is... oh, here we go. Let's see. These are the three candidates in the first round of voting from the French election who garnered the bulk of support. And so let's see how they turned out. So Fillon was a right-wing semi-Eurosceptic, and who ended on to endorse Macron, that traitor. But, well, good enough. His supporters saw a fair amount of his supporters, I should say, saw through, while another good portion chose to abstain, which I suppose is a victory in itself, considering almost 60% of his former supporters chose to abstain. Good for them. Good for them. Of course, then there's Mélenchon, who was Mélenchon. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but of course the communists would fucking vote for Macron. That's not a surprise. And excuse that noise. That was me hitting my desk. And then I don't know who Hamon was or any of his policies in particular. I think he was kind of crazy. I think he was France's John McAfee. If you follow the Libertarian Party primaries at all, I think he's France's John McAfee. He barely won it all, I think. I think Mélenchon, or because I think Fillon was third behind Le Pen and Macron, and then I think Hamon was after Fillon, and because Mélenchon got like 5% and whatever. So yeah, this is the portion of the right wing that are traitors, and these are the portion of the commies that, all of these, 100% of these people we throw out of helicopters at a later date. But yeah, praising. All right, she's still doing good work. She'll be back in 5 years, I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Le Pen will continue to National into the future, and yeah, she's gonna continue to do good things for France, I believe. So, why don't we read Cuck Master General Justin Trudeau's statement on the election of Emmanuel Macron? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today issued the following statement on the result of France's presidential election. On behalf of the Government of Canada, I would like to congratulate Emmanuel Macron on his election as the next president of France. Canada and France share a warm history in our common history, deep cultural ties, people-to-people connections, and strong economic partnership. We also closely collaborate on important international issues such as strong allies and partners with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, G7, G20, Francophone. Yes. Go figure that France's only true colony that it should bear any amount of pride towards is as big as pushy as they are. I look forward to working closely with President-elect Macron in the years ahead as we work together on a progressive agenda to promote international security, increase collaboration in science and technology, and create good middle-class jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. This also includes implementing the Canada-EU Comprehensive Economic... Oh boy. More free trade, not free trade agreements. Shocking. Good news in the whole of this is that, thankfully... Oh, excuse me. Le Pen herself is not taking the defeat too hard. Marine Le Pen loses French election but dances the night away amid warnings, far right on the rise, and I don't believe she's wrong. I believe this will only... I think this, as much as I hate to say it, I think this ends right-wing populism as a movement, or as gaining political speed with her. A lot of people thought it would end with the failed election of Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, but everybody knew he was a far shot anyway. Everybody had higher hopes for Le Pen. A lot of betting places had her too. It was close. It should have been close, but oh boy, answer a quick question and read this article. How about nah? How about this one instead? dances her cares away after French presidential election defeat. Good for her. Good for her. Marine Le Pen hit the dance floor on Sunday night after her French presidential election defeat to Emmanuel Macron. The far-right anti-EU leader was filmed getting down to I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett and the Black Hearts and YMCA by the Village People. Nice. Extraordinary scenes at her cue. The leader of the Front National is seen celebrating the results despite having only won a third of votes. She had earlier claimed the result had been a victory for the Front National. Her historic and massive score turned her party into the leading opposition force against the new president's plans. As it has, I imagine the French. I don't know much about French government, quite frankly, so I don't know if they operate on a parliamentary basis. I imagine they would, like most European countries. So French parliamentary elections may look interesting in the future, especially depending on what Macron's plans soon look like. I call on all patriots to join us, Miss Le Pen said, ahead of the legislative elections next month. Oh, legislative elections are happening next month, so this will be quite interesting. More than ever in the months ahead. She won 11 million votes, twice the number of her father, Jean-Marie, the founder of Front National, in 2000, polled him to 2002. Yep, that's the end of that article. One thing I am curious about is these gray counties, as one, they outnumber Le Pen, and two, they I don't know what that means. I did see a curious article not too long ago stating that Le Pen came in third, apparently. Macron defeats Le Pen, Macron defeats Le Pen. Yes, here we go. Expressed. Marine Le Pen came third place. Let's see what they mean by that, because based on the previous map we saw, that might be correct. Le Pen third in election as spoiled ballots and beats votes. EU pick. Oh, so it's saying more people chose to abstain than actually vote for her. Early polls generally secured a dismal 33.94%. We now know that's some 4.8% or something. Emmanuel Macron soared to victory with 65-ish% of the vote. As Le Pen congratulated the newly crowned French president, and a cordial phone conversation report showed the number of votes who spoiled their ballot papers and abstained from voting topped the defeated right-wing candidate's total. Bunch of bitches. Not surprised. A record-breaking 12% of the French voters are believed to have spoiled their ballots, apparently refusing to vote for either of the presidential candidates. Furthermore, 25.3% of those eligible to vote did not, a record amount since the 1969 general election. The total number of abstentions and spoiled ballots, a whopping 12 million, beat the 10.7 million votes that Ms. Le Pen won on Sunday's vote. It's the end. Yes, she won't be able to pull support from moderate voters. No, she's been the underdog all this time and will go on to win. Is this asking about the election? Well, quite honestly, I think she'll have a chance going forward in the election, in future elections, the next presidential election, and in the legislative elections next month. So, no, she will. Interesting. I suppose, I don't know if that was taken prior to or after to the election, but interesting to see what people think. The French national paper Le Monde confirmed the reports, claiming Mr. Macron took a total of 20.6 million votes. Overlooking her monumental defeat, Mrs. Le Pen has hailed her party as a new political force. She added, "Our patriotic and Republican alliance will be the primary force of opposition to the program of the new president." And God, I hope so. I hope she takes some seats in the French legislative body. However, France's youngest ever president got off to an embarrassing start as he was unknowingly caught on live TV practicing his victory speech. The somber-faced and nervous-looking Mr. Macron was filmed sipping on water and uncomfortably reading snippets of his speech in front of the camera. That's not that embarrassing. Other broadcasts showed an assistant dabbing makeup onto his face with a sponge as he prepared, unaware that he was being broadcast to millions of viewers around the world. When he finally delivered the speech, Mr. Macron said, "I will defend France, its interests, its images, its message. I will not allow myself to be stopped by any obstacle." Well, that second part of your statement may be true, but you will not defend France. You will sell it out to the EU. You will sell it out to Islam. You will sell it out to every other political force under the sun before you actually defend France. You will not defend its interests. Its people will continue to die at your hands, and you will not defend its images or its message. French culture will begin to, will accelerate its death under, of course, this fool, this monkey that the French people have elected. But again, I believe Sargon had it right the first time when he said that simply are not ready to defend their sovereignty. 'Tis a great disappointment. A great disappointment indeed. You know, I'm not one who's cared about the French people, quite frankly. I find their snide and haughty attitude to be grown, snooty. I have the same opinions of the French that most Americans do, quite frankly, and I hope that's not much of a surprise to people, but I feel bad. There's so much of a cultural legacy there that we Americans take for granted at the same time, beyond a shared history. There's a shared culture there. There's a shared identity there that, goes back to the ideas of Rousseau and Locke and Voltaire and all those good, smart, intellectual type folk who I would be willing to bet are ashamed of the current goings-on. Not like there's much of a case to be made anymore, but oh well. Again, legislative elections are coming on. I see I actually have one viewer now, and I see Nick was on momentarily. So just some thoughts I had, of course, on the election in general, but also on the state of France. The acceleration of the death of French culture is inevitable now. And if it doesn't die under Macron, it will die under whoever's elected next, save if that's someone like Le Pen or someone who's Eurosceptic or willing to actually crack down on the dangers that Islam presents. All right. I feel I've ranted and raved long enough, and you've all been very kind and listening to this for as ever long as you have. So thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of that and through it. Have any opinions, feel free to share them down below, and I'll try to do a stream or something or another little thought sometime soon. Thank you and good night.